Mike takes off in the green water. Somehow or another, the green water turns white, surfing right next to his shadow. Tommy's on outside. While Mike Doyle was taking off behind him. Mike was having more fun than anybody else this day. Rusty Miller riding a fast wave at Haleiwa. Butch Van Arsdale switching his stand outside, gets hit by the whitewater. Original hot dogger here, gonna do a head dip. While outside, Greg Knoll riding Avalanche. See the North Shore for a while and move over the west side of the island to a place called Makaha. We ran into a little road trouble here, and finally making it to Makaha, we find Paul Strow getting ready to get on the nose. Mike Doyle and Linda Merrill in 1963, winning the 1963 Makaha Tandem Championships. Mike rides backwards. Now watch closely on this next wave. Linda is in a swan, and Mike decides to ride backwards, and as he turns around, he loses his balance. And watch how he catches it while he's on one leg. Mike Doyle and Linda Merrill. The Australians showed that they could ride tandem, too. Not to be outdone, the Hawaiians went out early. The Hawaiians have it the right way. They let the girl do all the work. In fact, why not invite a friend over? Meanwhile, all this was going on, Midget was practicing for the Makaha Championships, which he won in 1963. Right behind him was John Peck. One of the events was the run, swim, and paddle contest, which Lord Blears is one of the contestants. Now here you see Lord Blears running up to the beach, touching his partner, who looks something like a butterfly. But then the surf started to come in faster, and everybody was getting nervous, so they knew that the North Shore was starting to break. So Mike Doyle and a few others headed to the North Shore the fastest way they could, through Kaina Point. ran into a little trouble and they had to dry out the engine. Mike was disgusted. Chuck was trying to figure out what was happening. And they knew the surf must have been picking up because there's a 20-foot cliff right behind Mike and the water was coming over the top. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that some of the cars never made it. Well, finally getting the car started again, we didn't want to get stuck, so we stuck Mike Graham on the hood of the car to tell us where the puddles were. He didn't tell us, so we found out anyway. Sammy Davis Jr. was with us, and we finally made it to the North Shore. Lunch, and we check out the pipeline. Earlier, there was no wind. As Jackie Everly takes off, you can see that there was nothing to make the wave hold up. Barry Bloomfield takes off behind him. And the wind started to blow offshore just a little bit. Snooky Pie dropping in. Very slow wave. Then it started to pick up a little bit stronger as Buzzy Newell makes the first wave. Sammy Lee outside, getting a beautiful long ride at the pipeline. Jim Graham decides to body surf. Rusty Miller gets locked in the small inside wave. John Peck taking off outside. Mick McMahon never got off his feet. Barry Bloomfield switches his stance at the pipeline. Midget was hot dogging. Then the waves were increasing in size and speed just a little bit. Barry Bloomfield from Hawaii. Some of the surfers never got past the takeoff. While others like John Peck were just playing with the waves. John Peck in a beautiful pipeline wave. Watch it spit right over the top of him. Barry Bloomfield rides the inside and switches his stance. And an unusual angle never filmed before at the pipeline. From a palm tree shooting straight down to show you how deep the pipeline waves really are. And remember, it's only 4 feet deep. The sharp coral heads right underneath the surfer. Watch how this wave just squares off in the back, completely covers Midget. And the boy with polio, Levi, decides to try the pipeline his first time. Using his feet as a rudder, it was a heck of a try. Butch Linden gets a glassy wave outside. Well, John Peck hits bottom. Buzzy Newell decides to try to hang 5, which he did. Butch Linden wanted to see how far back into the tube he could get. Midget gave up surfing and decided to body surf. Stephen Abreu gets completely locked inside this wave and it blows the whitewater right through the top of his head. Greg Knoll takes off and finds himself on the outside of the curl. He switches his weight to the left, pushes himself into the tube, and rides inside all the way through. Barry Bloomfield hangs 5, and there's no doubt about it. Butch Van Aarstellen does another first. He runs up to the nose and does a standing island pullout at the pipeline. Barry Bloomfield got cheated on this wave. He thought he was completely locked inside this wave. When he came out, there was nothing left, and he was looking for it. Butch Linden was still trying to see how far into the tube he could get. Greg Knoll takes off and gets hit by the whitewater, pulls onto his board, goes over the falls while holding onto his board and makes it. John Peck gets the steep waves. John Peck with the most beautiful ride at the pipeline that day. John Peck. Just to show you how much film was used just in the Hawaii trip alone, this is just the film used in Hawaii alone for this movie, Walk on the Wet Side. And be sure to look forward to my new movie, Inside Out, coming out this year. And when you use this much film, every roll counts. Beach you visit, you find waves anywhere from 2 feet up to 20 feet. And you see surfers of all ages. There's an old saying that old surfers never die, they just disappear. And you find boards of all sizes. Here we see Stephen Petty surfing Haleiwa in Hawaii on a 7-foot board. Here's Wurzel on his standard 20-foot board. And no matter where you go, you find several people with different types of pullouts. Here we see various types. Some pull out and take off, while others, like Chuck, noted for his Aztec two-step. Others who pull out, like Butch Van Arsdalen, get tired of surfing so long they just sit them out. Others who are in a hurry, while the rest of the cameras on the beaches just wave goodbye. A top surfer of 1963 was John Peck. Here we see some various shots from California and Hawaii of John Peck. And let's watch this picture from the beginning.
Where is all of this water that they are now riding on?
This is all Hawaii. This is the Bonsai Pipeline. This is considered one of the most dangerous beaches in the world. Here he is surfing Belzyland in Hawaii. Look how he rides the inside rail. He also rode some big waves at Sunset Beach. Here he is surfing in Ventura, California. Watch how he handles his board. Another top surfer of 1963 was Butch Van Arsdalen. Here he is at Sunset Beach. Butch was noted in Hawaii for his pipeline rides, and here he is with his quick turns.
And his fancy pull-out.
Here Butch does a standing island at the pipeline. He was also noted for his switch stance at Waimea Bay. Watch him drop right back into the bottom. He was really disgusted after this one. came out of this one, he said that was a heck of a way to take a shower.
Back down home, we call him a poke and a plumb surfer. So he pokes his head in the water and he's plumb out of sight.
On this next wave made Butch Van Arsdalen famous. He got completely locked in a pipeline wave, came right out sitting down. He was so jazzed he gave himself an applause.
He's just praying to get back to terra firma.
Another top surfer of last year was Phil Edwards. Look how smooth he is. When he pulls out of the next wave, he goes straight up to the top. Another top surfer of 1963 came from Australia. He won the 1963 Macau Championships. His name was Midget Fairley.
Seems like it'd be a lot easier if he'd just stand still instead of running back and forth and jumping up and down like I am.
That's called hot dogging. See, he's giving himself a shower there. Look how square this wave gets in the back. The Bonsai Pipeline. Let's leave the top surfers now and move over to Hawaii to a place called Haleiwa, which is situated on the North Shore. Let's watch the magazine cover of Mike Henson come to life. Another top surfer from California was Mike Doyle. Watch how he tears Haleiwa apart. Mike's got a lot of respect for the waves. If you watch closely, watch how he salutes the wave with his left hand. He heard some noise behind him, and it was Tommy Zahn taking off. Rusty Miller, another surfer from California, gets a big wave. And Mickey Dorr and Butch Van Arsdalen drive right through the wave. And here's pretty boy Mike Henson. Watch when he comes out of the wave how he fixes his hair. Rusty Miller and Mike Henson just barely squeaks through.
Say, now, whereabouts is this beach?
This is called the Bonsai Pipeline.
Oh, yes, Dale, I've heard of that one.
This is one of the most dangerous beaches in the world.
It looked pretty dangerous just then.
This is what you call fun surf.
It's fun because lying under the waves is the coral. The only way to fly.
Rusty Miller gets locked in this one.
And you'll never find the key.
Barry Bloomfield hangs 5. Rusty Miller shows how he can take off on a big drop. Bloomfield switches his stance. The waves seem to be getting larger. Buzzy Newble from Hawaii. The waves seem to be picking up speed, too. Outside, Mick McMahon from Australia. Outside that, Jackie Everly.
He rides like the sheriff's after him.
Here comes the sheriff right behind him, Buzzy Newble. Jackie Everly makes a late takeoff and ends up going over the falls. Butch Linden from Malibu, California makes a classy wave. And Greg Knoll takes off and finds himself on the outside of the wave. He switches inside, riding the inside tube. And how's this for an unusual angle? From a palm tree shooting straight down to show you the depth of the pipeline. Here comes Stephen Abreu. What do you think of this?
It looks like he was just shot out of a cannon. And he's going to have a ball.
Let's drop into Sunset Beach with Mike Doyle and watch some of the nicer waves that come through the island. Here's Mike Doyle again surfing Sunset. Good-sized wave. Rusty Miller right behind him. Sunset Beach is capable of holding waves up to 20 feet, rideable surf. Mike Doyle was paddling outside and saw the surfer coming down on top of him. He turned sideways, ended up making the wave himself. It looks like a big day at Malibu, doesn't it? Here's Mike Doyle. Hearing some noise behind him, he turns around. It was Mickey Dora taking off next to the tube. Mickey was riding a hot dog board, and this shows you how fast the waves really are. The whitewater catches up with him, gets him from behind. Does a go behind. And don't let this surfer fool you. He's got complete control the whole way.
Oh, this is a favorite of mine. This is the gas chamber. Love to have you boys drop in any time. Remember, we will always be waiting for you at the castle door. Our friend Jim Graham. But don't forget Chuck Lennon. We've been trying to get him for years to join us. Notice how he watches the top of the wave. A goodie.
It seems like all through California and Hawaii, everybody runs into the same trouble. Somebody trying to borrow wax. When you give it to them, you never get it back. So here we have John Peck finally found an answer to the wax problem. Filling up all the wax boxes with soap. And then when people go and borrow the wax, there's only one thing that happens.
Is the wipeout with that new foaming action.
These are some of the worst wipeouts in California and Hawaii in the past 2 years. What do you think of them, Boris?
If only I could fly like that. Seems to be doing fine. You spoke, dude.
I says I. Oh, look at there. It's a daily double, I say.
Five-way traffic.
Of course, we always have to stop for a light lunch. Then, of course, a surfer must keep in condition at all times. So we'll have a little exercise while we change the next reel.
The Malibu contest. The surfer, Little John Richards. The waves were strictly hot. Malibu, everybody looks the same. LJ. Joey Cabell, the winner of the contest, really shows some good form. Joey Cabell again. And shows some good form, and he hangs the heel right on the tip. Contest. 2 days later, some good surf came pouring in. It was pretty small, but Lance Carson showed some good form, and he hangs 10. Malibu doesn't always stay small, though. Sometimes the waves reach incredible size. Taking off on one of the largest waves wrapping around Malibu Point. Johnny Fane. Storm was a-brewing. We grab our boards and we head over to a place in Ventura County, the place Hollywood by the Sea. The surfers, Butch Linden from the Malibu Surfing Association. Another surfer from the Malibu Surfing Association. Another head dip for Butch. With an excellent cutback. Butch doesn't want to get his hair wet, so he covers it up as he goes through.
A place where all the surfers search for. Radar Tower, the Shangri-La. Tremendous waves waiting for those strong enough to conquer. Butch Linden and Gene Eagle. For your information, if you care to search out the spot, it's located between Mexico and San Francisco. It's there, waiting for you. Radar Tower.
Here we are at the oil piers. Before the sun goes down, the surfer Bob Barron catching the most beautiful shaped waves we've ever seen at the oil piers.
gonna take you all to the sand spits in Santa Barbara on the first Woody ever built.
Surfer Lance Carson at the sand spit. Let's load up the Woody and head down to Rincon Point. And another old-time surfer is Lance Carson. In 1961, Lance became popular in his surfing. Here he is in 1962. Here he is in 1963. Here he is in 1964 with a bottom turn at Rincon. You see surfers from all over visiting Rincon, and here we have John Peck showing how he can turn on at Rincon.
Well, he's pretty courteous.
California, Johnny Fain rips Rincon apart. And occasionally outside you'll see a few whales.
Well, we just have a few sharks drop in.
I noticed. Those are pets of mine. I just like to keep them around, to keep the game interesting.
The surfers try to beat the shark over the head with the fronts of their boards. Others try to beat him with their arms. Some on the beach couldn't get away fast enough. Every once in a while you'll see Mickey Dora come down to Rincon, and when he does, he gets some great rides. Hanging 5.
Look at him, he's riding backwards.
A regular Rincon shows his style in body surfing. Rincon pulls surfers from all over the world. The surfer you're seeing now is Midget Fairley from Australia. Little wave. He says if Harold can do it, he can do the same thing. Rincon does get its size, and even when it's big, it stays glassy. So goes out to the point and checks it out, decides to go in. His first wave he drives, and it ends in a wipeout. He tries it again. This also ends in a wipeout. At least he's consistent. With all that trouble of wiping out, he still ends up on a wave with Cooper body surfing. Regular for the past 2 years at Rincon is Bob Barron. in November, Bob Cooper was out on the water by himself and caught some beautiful glassy waves. Even late in the afternoon, Bob Cooper got some waves all to himself. Bob seems to be racing a bird body surfing. Shot a still picture of Bob Cooper.
Rock out.
People ask me why I named the film Inside Out. Well, take a look at this wave here and look at the right side of the screen because there's a surfer locked right inside and he's going to come right out. Another reason why I named the film Inside Out is Don Morley here at Velzyland. Mark Martinson on the next wave on a cloudy day at Velzyland, getting completely locked inside and coming right out.
surfers know how to surf, but in case you don't know, the first step in surfing is to face your board toward the horizon line, and the very first step you have to learn is to paddle out. Now, the next step you have to learn is to learn how to pull out, and this is Harold Iggy's advice: don't do it. Now, if you don't want to swim to shore, you can always hold on to the nose of your board, because it'll take you right there. Or maybe you'd like to body surf on somebody else's body. Or maybe you prefer the Pipo board on an outside pipeline day, breaking well over 15 feet. It's something like a waterfall. Now, there's several types of pullouts, and this is Butch Van Aarstellen's favorite pullout at the pipeline. Mickey Ghost likes his type of pullout. It's rolling over 3 times, backwards, frontwards, sideways, and then hitting bottom. It's only 4 feet deep. Now, people all over the world have their own types of pullouts. Surfers such as Chris Green in Hawaii has his type. And these are various types of surfing pullouts all around California and Hawaii. Now that you have an idea what surfing is, we'll leave Los Angeles. We're heading north up to the Ventura County line area, and we're going to find a place called Stables right near the California Street area. And this spot here has got 55-degree water, offshore wind, small 2 to 3 foot waves with some hot surfers. Surfers like Rich Chu, Chuck Lennon, Pete Kopsev, and Dennis Rainey. Rich Chu paddling out. First one to take off, Chuck Lennon from Long Beach. Now, right behind Chuck is a surfer from Long Beach also, Pete Kopsev, right inside. And right behind Pete on the next wave is Dennis Rainey. Dennis makes a left go right, going left into the wave, making a sweep turn. After making his turn, going up to the nose and parallel stance right through the wave. And of course, Richard Chu. Now, Richard was riding this wave, and he had no cares or worries when he looked up on shore and saw one of the most beautiful sights he's ever seen in his life. It was Rowena LeSueur from Coolangatta, Australia. And Rowena, she's fantastic. She's got everything a man would want. And Richard looks up and sees it. She's got muscles, hair in her chest, just beautiful. Rowena LeSueur. And one thing about Rowena, she's really graceful. But this didn't bother the surfers outside. They just kept on surfing. We move on further down the coast. We go to a place that's probably one of the most famous surfing areas in the world. A place called, this place can hold waves maybe up to 15 to 20 feet. And the surf from 2 foot is just as good. It never fails that whenever I get to that beach, something different happens, something out of the ordinary. I just set up my camera, swung it out, and I pick up Bob Barron and Chuck Lennon holding hands. Now, at first, nobody could figure out what was happening. Then all of a sudden, Bob decides to get up on top of Chuck. Then he picks up his board for a spare, and they're off to the races. Then from the beach, we hear Bob yelling, "Come on, man, get some more speed up." This threw Chuck Lennon completely off balance. And then Bob ends up taking the rest of the wave on the nose. Now, this wasn't what was funny. It was a guy on the beach that was cracking up. But this is Rincon. Steve Bigler with the red trunks and green board and 15 other surfers going in and out the picture. Surfer outside doing a backside turn, David Nueva, right on the tip. And 210 pounds of fat, Bob Barron, right on the nose. All his friends call him pork chops, but his mother calls him garbage gut. But he spends a lot of time right on the tip. Bob Barron. Now inside, there's a little sandbar. Steve Bigler's hanging 5. And outside, Chuck Lennon got the wave of the day. There was nobody in front of him, nobody behind him, nobody paddling out. He had it all to himself, the best wave of the day, and what did he do? He just blew it. This time he wanted to ride tandem with somebody else, so he asked Walt Robles to get on his board. Walt decided to get on Chuck's board, and what did Chuck do? He just ended up moving away. Here's Bob Barron again, dropping and climbing. Now watch closely what Bob does. He stalls his board, waiting for the wave to build up. Just when he thinks it's the right time, he'll walk up to the nose, and while hanging 10, do an island pull-out, and end up doing a 360. Bob Pork Chops Barron. Don Morley ran up to the nose, the tail block popped out, he slides down the face sideways, almost making it through the wave. These surfers here are watching pure glassy wave. The place, LA County line. And who do you think came this day? You bet, it was Rowena LeSueur. She went to see her boyfriend Steve Bigler, who was surfing down there, and they were talking things over, and Gary Brown was talking to Chuck Lennon. Chuck told Gary to turn around to look at the surf. Gary did, and hit Rowena. But Gary went out anyway to catch a few waves, left Rowena sitting on the beach. Now the lefts were in pretty good shape, but on the outside, you get the right slides, they weren't so good, as Don Morley shows you now. By the time he stood up, turned his board, trimmed up, walked up to the nose, he had to straighten off because he was right on shore. The surf, because there she is on the right, Rowena LeSueur from Coolangatta, Australia. And Gary Brown took off, and all we could hear from shore was Gary yelling, "Let go." And Rowena stuck right to him. She really likes guys. Then all of a sudden we hear Gary yelling, "I can't see." Well, Rowena sort of flipped over Gary. This time, Gary took off in back of Rowena. It didn't do any good. We're loading up the car. We're heading to Hollywood by the Sea with a friend of mine who used to be a pilot. This is some of the largest surf ever filmed in California. It sort of resembled Waimea Bay and a little bit like the Bonsai Pipeline. The surfers were leaving early. The beach was almost deserted. The wind was blowing. There was a slight overcast. Now we're going to move over to the island of Kauai. Before we hit the north shore of Oahu, where all the big waves are, we stop off at the island with a few Australians, Dewey Weber from California, and Harold Iggy. This is known as the Garden Isle, one of the most beautiful islands in the chain. Everywhere you look, beautiful waterfall. But this isn't what we were looking for. We came to ride Hanalei Bay, a mile-long wave, and we couldn't find it. We must have driven around the island 2 or 3 times. Finally, Dewey decided to go see an old friend of his, the Great Kahuna, the great surf god. And here he is coming down the road, the Great Kahuna. The only one that could talk to him was Norm Stam from Australia, and here's their conversation. You can tell Norm's father used to be a dentist. Norm was trying to get the information out where was Hanalei Bay. We finally found out where it was, and we were really amazed. We found that the break was so long that we had to take turns from one end of the bay to the other to drive the surfers back to the point. Just to look, there's one side of the bay. You ride it to where the camera is now. And here we see Bob Boot from Australia just following the coastline on one of those mile-long waves at Hanalei Bay. Really picks up fast on Kauai, and you'll see how Norm Stam paddles through one wave, and you'll see him on a wave that looks maybe anywhere from 5 to 6 feet. But watch what happens when Norm drops down. Hanalei Bay. With surf this size, we knew that the North Shore must be good, so we get there just in time to see the Australians getting up early in the morning, heading to Haleiwa. The surf is big. Is situated near Sunset Beach, just a few miles away, and let's get ahead of the Australians real quick to take a look at the shore break. It was big. The color of Hawaii was almost completely gone because it was a local storm. Some of the largest waves ever filmed were right here this day at Haleiwa. 2 of them, Dewey Weber took off on. It looked something like sunset. First wave, Jojo Perrin kicking out fast, and right up front was Dewey, right on the tip. On the wave outside, we pick up Jeff Hackman on a smooth style, dropping and climbing. Right behind Jeff, we see Butch Van Aartstellen with the red board and his little hat right on the top of his head. Now the next wave, well, that was a big one. Dewey dropped in, came underneath the lip it was throwing over him. He decides to make a cutback. Now watch closely as he makes his cutback. The wave actually spits him out of the whitewater into the green. But then the next wave came through, nobody could believe. It looked just like Sunset Beach. Dewey took off on a big wave at Haleiwa, and he drops down. He has to go around Butch Van Aartstellen, who's paddling out. This slowed Dewey up just enough to get locked inside this wave. It's throwing over his head. He's looking at the roof, and he decides to bail out just in time. Butch Van Aartstellen on the next wave is getting bigger. This time he puts his shoulder right into it. Then the big set came, and Harold Iggy took off on a wave that completely closed out across the bay. And this whitewater can be seen all the way from where the Aussies were coming. And they wouldn't stop for anything or anybody. Meanwhile, back at Haleiwa, Mike Henson on one of those perfect waves, just peeling right over his back. Weber again, turning from the middle of his board, riding high. Dewey told me he spent a lot of time perfecting this pull-out. The idea is to get up to the lip of the wave, wait for it to suck out, and then free fall. Now we're going to be going to a spot that has never been filmed before. It breaks on the Kahuku side of the island, and what you're looking at now is the golf course, the Kahuku golf course. Well, right on the 7th hole of the golf course, straight out, is that whitewater. A place called the 7th hole, of almost a mile out at sea. The North Shore had completely closed out for 3 or 4 days. The surf was well over 15 feet, but the Kona winds were blowing onshore. On this side of the island, the surf was still big, with offshore wind. The place was unreal. Mike Doyle said it was the best spot he's ever surfed in his life, and here you'll see why. Jimmy Pageant taking off, dropping into a wave, and when he comes out, he throws his hands up in the air screaming. A surfer's paradise. A left and a right slide. A huge peak, almost a mile out at sea. And you can't beat it for 86-degree water and offshore wind. The 7th hole. Don Morley taking this wave. And watch Mike Doyle with a beautiful takeoff. Throwing his arms up, you really can't believe it. Mike goes in the back door and comes out the front. The place you're looking at now is probably one of the most famous beaches in Hawaii. Probably one of the most ridden. The place is called Sunset Beach. Now what I did here has never been done before. I spent 2 days of filming Sunset. It started on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon it was completely closed out. To show you the order of how the waves were, we'll start Thursday morning. The shore break was beautiful. It had offshore wind, and it was pretty mean looking inside. It should break to the peak even with this white house. It comes in that side, you know it's perfect Sunset Beach. But when it started to close out, it was 200 yards off the normal lineup. The peak was gone and it was nothing but a large right slide. But in the morning Thursday, it was good. In fact, it was so good that inside, some of the surfers were getting long nose rides locked inside Sunset 2. A clean cut, a brand new surfboard. Here's Bob Boot from Australia hitting the cross chop. And right behind Bob on the next wave, Chip Post from California with a vertical drop. The surf is even getting bigger. Now look what's happening outside. The shape is changing. The peak is gone. Now there's a lot of surfers out that day. One was from New York. Mike told the guy never to take off on a wave at sunset, especially that day. The guy was never out on any big waves in his life. He took off anyway. You can tell if you watch closely that he was excited he made the wave. The next morning, it didn't look like sunset. It was an overcast day. The wave didn't have a peak. It was almost closing out. Surfboards were flying around like matchsticks. Surfers were flying all over the place, and hardly any of the waves were made. It didn't even look like Sunset Beach. Greg Noll looks like he's being passed up by Buzzy Trent. It looks like he's being standing still. But watch Greg Noll catch up with Buzzy Trent. His feet are hanging almost over the rail. He's trying to trim up to beat the sunset wave. Now after we see sunset, now let's take off to some fun surf, another spot that's never been filmed before. We pick up Corky Carroll hitching a ride with his girlfriend to a place they name Razor Reef. This place has never been ridden before. And if you watch closely, it's even got offshore winds. Corky Carroll and Mike Doyle. Now, this place was breaking right over the coral rocks at the firehouse near Waimea Bay. Probably a little wind swell that came in. Nobody knew about it. The only two that knew was Mike Doyle on this wave, Corky on the next. Now remember, there's nobody else around for miles. Everybody's sitting around wishing they had some surf. These two are the only two out, and somehow, for some reason, Corky ends up running over Mike. At first, Mike was having a little trouble with the place. He named it Doyle's Bottom because practically every wave all morning, he hit bottom. But Corky was having fun. He thought this was a perfect little spot to hot dog. Mike was trying to keep Corky quiet, but Corky's the type that gets excited. Corky takes off, switches stance on the nose, drops in on the nose, trims up on the nose, goes underneath the whitewater on the nose, and pulls out on the nose. Corky Carroll. Now watch closely as Mike takes off on this wave. Good shaped wave. His rail digs in, and he gets the rail right in the stomach. Mike Doyle. This time he holds himself up. Corky drove Mike crazy by diving off his board and body surfing it. All this time, Mike hasn't even made a wave yet, but Mike catches one of the waves of the day, almost disappearing and coming right out. Now, a lot of us had a house right across the street from Velzyland. There was Mike Doyle, Corky Carroll, Chuck Lennon, Corky Carroll's father was there, and Jimmy Paget, and a few others. And before we have our slight intermission, let's take a look at a little section I usually put Barbara as a beautiful surfing area. We have surfers like David Nueva and Richard Chu. Richard goes out and hangs 10. He yells over to David to beat that, so David goes out. And what he does is pretty remarkable. He makes a beautiful backside turn, goes up to the nose and crosses his legs and hangs 5. Once he does that, he backpedals back to the end of the board, makes a cutback, comes up and hangs 10. Then he salutes Richard, who's paddling out, and says, beat that. Another surfer out that day, other than David, was a surfer you're seeing on the next wave, Steve Bigler. Steve's got the green board. Now watch what Steve does on this wave. Steve doesn't hang 10 the normal way. He hangs 10 this way. There's 5, and there's another. And David Nueva again. Look at the control of his board as he comes through the wave here. And he really knows how to handle the crowd. Now in the next wave, watch closely. This is really funny. David took a funny wipeout. In fact, the wipeout was so funny that on shore, this pregnant pelican was laughing so hard she couldn't take off. She just sort of sat there and rocked. And Rich Chew got up to the nose, and his tail block popped out, and he wanted to see how far across the wave he could go sideways. We leave Hammond's, we move over to a place called Malibu. We're going to take a look at two top surfers, and that's all. Malibu is noted as probably the fun spot of California, especially in the summertime. And this is a rare shot to see nobody on a beautiful 5-foot wave. We'll be taking a look at two surfers. One, Kemp Auburn. Now, Kemp likes people. Say hello to everybody, Kemp. And Kemp goes surfing. Now, the next surfer we're going to see is loved by everybody. He's everybody's friend, everybody respects him. He's the most controversial surfer in the world. His name, Mickey Dora. Say hello to everybody, Mickey. And Mickey goes surfing. He controls that board. Who do you think showed up? You're right, Rowena LeSueur, but this time she didn't go surfing. What she did was put her board in the water, she paddled over to the pier, and she just sat underneath the pier, and Mickey kept surfing. First, he didn't pay any attention to her until the closer he got to the pier, the more he could see what she was doing. But as it stands now, let's watch Mickey just handle Malibu and the people. Now, the closer he got to the pier, the better he could see what Rowena was doing. What she was doing, he couldn't figure out. She was sitting underneath the pier, pulling on this long, long piece of rope. And that's all she did all day. Meanwhile, Mickey just kept on surfing. He paid no attention. Mickey Dora at Malibu. On shore, Chuck Lennon was talking things over to David Nueva and asking him what was happening at a place called Trestles. Trestles is the Camp Pendleton Marine Base near San Diego. It's a private area. The surfers aren't allowed. But when they get in, they find beautiful surf for California. The day we got there, the surf was running 4 to 6 feet, glassy green water, and no wind at all. Chuck Lennon was the first out. He couldn't believe it. Now, another surfer from California that was there that day was Steve Bigler, really working over a good, hot 5 to 6 foot wave. Steve Bigler from Long Beach. Another surfer who was ripping the waves apart was a surfer that surfs this place all the time. He's got the place wired. His name is Mark Martinson. Watch him stall, waiting for the wave to build up. He'll get up to a cheater 5, dragging his arm in the wave. Mark Martinson. those hot days, and Chuck Lennon just couldn't believe it. No wind at all day. Just glassy waves, which is really rare for California. Mark Martinson was surfing toward me. I was using a 500mm lens, and with this angle here, you notice that there's really no speed to the wave, and the wave doesn't look like it has any length to it at all. But Mark is climbing and dropping, and that's about the end of the wave right there, and it really doesn't look like much. But by changing lenses, and by moving over to the side, instead of having him coming in front of me, shooting from the side, you not only get speed of the surfer, like right here you'll see Mark, not only getting speed, but you can actually see how long the wave really is at the trestle. Now dropping in front of Steve Pesman is Jackie Baxter. This is our last ride at the trestles, but watch closely. Jackie spent almost 2 months perfecting a pull-out that would show speed. Now watch Jackie's pull-out at the trestle. The Aztec two-step. Now we fly back to Hawaii, and we're going to go and we'll stop off at the Bonsai Pipeline. Now this is a very important thing you've got to remember about surfing. You've got to keep your mind on what you're doing and don't look on shore. Watch closely as Kiki Spangler takes off at the pipeline, a perfect wave. He's got nothing to worry about, he's got it made. But what did he do? He looked up on shore, just threw the whole thing off balance. He didn't keep his mind on what he was doing. And this causes trouble for surfers. In fact, none of these surfers kept their mind on what they were doing. They all looked up on shore. Pure disaster. Now, none of these surfers kept their mind on what they were doing. They kept looking on shore. In fact, some of the surfers couldn't even paddle back out. Have you ever been surfing and have some guy come up right next to you and say, "Hey, buddy, can I borrow some wax?" Jimmy Pageant got up early the next morning, looked out the window of the house, and saw the pipeline. We went over to the beach, and it was deserted. Jimmy decided to paddle out with Don Morley, and just as I set my camera up, the place looked like army maneuvers. From every bush, lenses were sticking out. As soon as somebody paddles out the pipeline, everybody knows about it. The most dangerous beach in the world. Surfers were paddling out, the wind was blowing offshore. Now watch real closely on the next wave. Corky Carroll almost gets tubed. Chuck Lemon from Long Beach takes off on this pure glassy wave at the pipeline. Chuck knows this place and he knows how to bail out if you have to. Fall flat, keeping away from that reef. Some of these surfers didn't know how. Watch the different positions that they get into. Most of them head first into the coral. Corky Carroll going underneath the curl, turning around, doing a spinner, and almost runs over Don Morley, who's paddling out. This time Corky gets into a wave, comes out of it, laughing. He's all stoked. He trims up his board, he turns around and pushes the wave back. Watch him get inside and come right out, pushing the wave out. Corky Carroll. This time he comes out of the tube pointing and laughing. Now there was one day that the pipeline was so big that nobody's ever seen it like this, especially ridden. It took one full day to film the pipeline with just one roll of film. Usually I average anywhere from 10 to 15 rolls a day at the pipeline. It took all day to shoot one roll. So what I did was I kept the roll intact and without editing it, just to show you how the pipeline can get when it's mean. There were only a handful of surfers that went out, none from California, none from Hawaii. It was some of the biggest pipeline anybody's ever seen. It was the scariest pipeline that anybody ever saw, and that's for sure. The waves were so hollow that nobody could believe it. Let's take a look at the first day. It was 8 o'clock in the morning when I first set up my camera. It didn't even look like the same place. Closely on the next wave. This proves that the pipeline is only a one-man wave. The surfer takes off. A surfer from New York takes off on top of it. The surfer on top bails out and the board gets the surfer in the back. That was the first accident. On the next wave, nobody could believe it. This surfer was almost completely annihilated at the reef. He grabbed the nose of his board, he gets sucked over the falls and lands on 4 feet deep water with coral just sticking up waiting for him. Then by mid-afternoon, the surf got bigger. It was breaking the outside reef. These surfers were smart. They didn't take off. Kiki Spangler made the only wave of the day. And now it's hitting the outside reef. And these are small waves. Now look at the size of the next one. Dick Cattry from Florida, standing parallel on his board. Watch what happens. He's 8 to 10 feet inside the tube. There's no way out. By later that afternoon, around 3:30, the surf was getting bigger. Now the next wave, Dick Cattry takes off. He's so far into the tube, it's so hollow in front of him, that he said you could drive a train through it without even getting the windows wet. Dick Cattry from Florida. Watch how the wave hollows out in front of him, forming a perfect cylinder. This is why they call it the pipeline. And late that night, almost 6 o'clock in the evening, the sun had almost completely set. Dick Cattry takes off on a wave that was unreal. He drops in. If he hadn't taken off on this wave, he'd probably still be sitting out there. He paddles like mad. He drops into this wave. He gets to the middle, and he doesn't know whether to bail out or to stick with his board. He's actually almost suspended inside the tube. Finally, when he does bail out, watch what happens to his board. It almost flattens against the top of the wave, which is 6 feet thick at the top. Well, enough of the fun surf. Now let's head over to Pupukea with the Australians, and they're stopping for lunch. As most surfers know that once you're in Hawaii, you usually run out of money fast, and the surfers sort of live off the fruit of the land. And these surfers were no different. The only trouble was that the gardener was there not more than 15 minutes before they got there and sprayed all the fruit. Now Sam, the surfer in the back, he had the worst case of stomach trouble I ever saw. I can't even tell you what Norm Sam got. But meanwhile, back at Pupukea, we're going to take a look at something that's never been done in surfing before. At least no one has ever told you. This is how you can make a sloppy wave look perfect, just by angles and using the right lens. Here's Mark Martinson at Pupukea on a sloppy day. Using a 300 millimeter right from shore, the wave has no shape. By moving about 50 yards down the beach, the wave gets a little bit better shape. By putting a 500 millimeter lens on, about 300 yards down the beach, the wave even gets better. When you put a 1,000 millimeter lens on from almost a quarter of a mile away, that's when you get the perfect wave. Mark Martinson at Pupukea. Surfers always wait for big waves. One beach that breaks very seldom is a place called Laniakea. But this day it was breaking big. Mike Henson, Peter Cole, and Fred Van Dyke on this one wave. Mike stalls his board and gets stuck in the back. It looks like he's got the wave all to himself. Look at how this wave actually throws into a tube. That's pretty good for a wave this size at Laniakea. Jojo Perrin from California was his first year in Hawaii. There he is there, 15 years old. And right up in front of Jojo is Red Hemmings. The sun sets fast in Hawaii, and especially when Waimea Bay is completely closing out across the bay. The waves were unestimated size. 2 days of completely closing out, they finally became perfect little peaks for fun surf or for the big wave rider. You take off at that white water, you finish your ride even with that point. If you get in any closer, in the middle of the bay, you've got to worry about the rip. You get in closer, you've got to worry about the shore break. But when Waimea Bay breaks, the surfers are always there to meet it. They'd sit around shore, and all they'd do was wax their board, waiting for an excuse to go out into the water. The excuse showed up. It's called the camera. Now, there's one thing about Waimea Bay that a lot of surfers agree. The wave there is really explosive. Half the battle is just paddling out. This surfer paddled over one wave. That wave turned into a closeout wave inside, unestimated size. But this is all leading up to what everybody's here for tonight, to see the largest 2 waves ever recorded on film. The New Yorkers were there. They were taking off on waves. They were dropping in, running over New Yorkers paddling out, and landing on other New Yorkers. Outside, it sort of looked like Sunday in New York. surfers paddled out for just one wave and came right back in. Waimea Bay, the big one. To top everything off, there was a tidal wave alert. People were running around evacuating their houses. This lady's loading up a truck full of clothes, and these guys are out there surfing. The police were there. They were trying to get people out of the water. Steve Bigler was out there taking off behind the peak. After an hour and a half of trying to get everybody out of the water, they evacuated the whole North Shore, leaving the surfers out to Waimea by themselves. Fred Van Dyke taking off on a Waimea Whopper. Now watch how the waves get bigger and bigger, break further and further out, until finally the two largest waves ever recorded on film will be coming up. Chip Post in California taking off on a big wave at Waimea. Eric Murphy from Santa Barbara, his first time out at Waimea. Look at him keep going down, just like in an elevator, straight down to the bottom. They're still loading up the truck. There's still a tidal wave alert. And now we'll take a look at the two largest waves. But beforehand, look at by Pat Edwards. Pat rode the largest wave ever ridden. Dick rode the second largest, which was an unestimated size. Let's take a look at Dick's first wave. A goofy footer at Waimea Bay. The second largest wave ever ridden. But this wave is so small compared to the next wave, this looks like a small day at Malibu. The wave that Pat Edwards took off on was unreal. When he paddled into it and he stood up, it was 8 feet over his head before he even got to the middle of the board. By the time his board dropped down, well, it's an unestimated size. You can take your own guess. Pat Edwards was a goofy foot. When he got to shore, his ear was bleeding and his nose was bleeding from pressure. The front of his board had shattered, the glass. And all he could say was, "How did I look?" Now let's take a look at Pat Edwards on the largest wave ever ridden at Waimea Bay. Here comes Dick Brewer out of the whitewater. And here's Pat at Waimea. We bring a close to Inside Out, and I want to thank you very much